Thanks, Paul. And good morning, everyone. We've arrived at decision day or decision days over the next day and a half at the most, and hopefully we can finish our business sooner than that. But the 2 points just made, I think, really sort of are a nice segue into what I wanted to say this morning. So in terms of transparency and decision-making process, I think what you're about to witness and experience is going to be an exercise in transparency and democratic decision-making that I suspect nobody in this room has ever been involved in before. I had the pleasure last year of being involved twice in this exercise, and it is the most exciting and rewarding part of any citizens' assembly. And I hope you'll find that over this couple of days as well. What we have lined up for you is a series of ballot papers where each and every person in this room has a single vote, and everyone's vote carries equal weight. We have an electoral process that's designed to fairly and accurately represent the views and wishes of the room. We have a design process that we're going to go through before each ballot is voted on, which is going to capture and express the wording of every single question that you vote on. Now, this will take some time, but it's an exercise in utmost transparency. Everything will be live streamed. Everything will be available on screen, so as we edit the ballot papers, you will see the editing taking place in real time, which captures the expressed wishes and preferences of this room. So it's an amazing exercise, but there's no point to me spending too much time talking about it. What I would say is, just to echo what Paul has said, you will have read on the newspapers, heard on the airways, and seen on social media lots of different commentary about which way people predict this Citizens' Assembly is going to go. What I would say to you, having been privileged to be getting feedback from each of you individually over many weeks and months now, is that there is no way of telling which way this Assembly is going to go in terms of your decisions, either about services change, or policy change, strategic change, or legislative change. These are all questions that will be answered in a thoroughly democratic way by you, the members, over the course of today and tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to this exercise. There are skeptics in the room, there are skeptics outside the room about how this works, but one thing I can assure you is that you are going to be involved in a thoroughly transparent and democratic exercise. Every single vote will be counted. That includes the votes that clearly express a view. It includes the votes that say, I don't know the answer to a particular question. It includes spoiled votes where somebody wants to, if you like, exercise an objection to the ballot, then that is going to be counted as well. And every single vote will be recorded and reported on. So you can see down to minute detail what the results of every single vote on every single question is. And those will be published in the final report that we publish at the end of this year. So total and utter transparency, and you're going to experience that over the next couple of days. I would echo what Paul says. Ignore what the commentators outside are saying. There is no way that anybody other than yourselves individually has any understanding of how you're going to vote. And maybe some of you have not yet made up your minds, and that's the purpose of today, is to give you roundtable discussion opportunities where you continue to thrash out the issues and the things. So let me come back then to where we're at. We have a process set up today that is going to it's going to flow as follows. We're going to start with, as Paul said, perhaps the most challenging of the ballot questions, which is on legislative change. Following that, we're going to get into a sequence of ballot papers. As you would have seen, 2 weeks ago, we circulated 9 draft ballot papers. Based on your feedback, we've managed to whittle that down to 6. It doesn't mean we've cut out questions, it just means we've restructured, we've combined some of the shorter ballot papers into lengthier ones. So we have 6 ballot papers that we need to get through over the course of these 2 days. Ballot paper 2 is the one we're going to take first because it's the one on legislative change. It's different from the other ballot papers, and I'll explain how. The other ballot papers, 1, 3, 4, 5 and 6, each of those effectively is a first past the post voting mechanism. So we tally the numbers of agrees, don't agrees and don't knows, and whichever is the majority decision of those becomes the decision of the Assembly. There is one change worth flagging up to you. So you'll remember the first draft of the ballot paper contained a headline recommendation followed by explanatory narrative, and that explanatory narrative was embedded in the question itself. So what we've done now, and you'll see it on the latest draft ballot paper, is we split that out. So as Paul says, what we want you to do is focus on the decision making around the recommendation, the text of the recommendation itself. After that, the explanatory narrative is a secondary priority issue. If there's anything glaring, by all means flag it up. But other than that, you will get that explanatory narrative in the draft report that we'll be sending around to you in about a month's time, and you'll have the opportunity then to correct or clarify or make any proposals that you want as the Assembly to that draft narrative text. But the key thing we need to focus on today is getting your decisions on the wording of the question, and we've tried to keep those as short and brief as possible, and that's where we need you to focus your efforts today. So ballot papers 1 to 6, excluding 2, are all, if you like, a series of agree, don't agree, or agree, disagree, or don't know, and we will simply tally the results for each question, and that will provide an overall majority or an expression of preference for each recommendation. Ballot paper 2 is the one on legal issues, and we've had to redesign that question, and we'll get into that in a moment. So the question reflects the 5 primary choices, which, as you know, are option A, the status quo, option B, health diversion, option C, comprehensive health-led approach, option D is a tolerance approach, and option E is legalisation and regulation. Those are the kind of conceptual framework that you've been looking at for the several months now, going back to the 4th meeting that we had in early September. So what we're going to do is, through a staged process, we're going to establish whether or not there's an overall majority in the room for any one of those particular options. If there's not, we then get into the question of a hybrid model, which is, if you like, choosing a particular approach for one drug and another approach for another drug, so we can go and explore. For example, there has been a lot of suggestions around treating cannabis differently, and we're going to get into that question in a greater level of detail as we work our way through the stages of the voting process. So if there isn't a clear overall majority in the room for a universal approach for every drug, then we get into the more nuanced examination in stages, in stage 3 of the voting, where we go to a single transferable voting mechanism, and Kieran will explain how that works. So it's the most fair and effective way to capture what the preference of the room is. So we're going to start with ballot paper 2. And what we're going to do is ask you to spend 20 minutes with the draft ballot paper in front of you, looking at the instructions, the information about the options A to E are familiar to you. Option F then is that hybrid model where you can pick and mix different approaches for different drugs. So we're going to ask you with your facilitators to spend 20 minutes looking at if you like, the headline text for each of those options and seeing if you can understand the process we're proposing. And then we'll get into an open session of Q&A where we'll have roving mics, and each table can put forward questions or proposals on any changes to the text for for stage 1 of this voting. So Paul, do you want to add to that?
No, Cathal, I think just maybe say that we'll be available to jump around tables if people want clarification. So,
yeah,
we'll keep this fluid. Can I just say one thing which is just really hanging on my mind? Just in case it's implicitly or explicitly hanging in the room, that the integrity of the Secretariat or the process of myself is called into question. I want to reassure everybody, I have not spoken to, had any engagement with, or nor has the Secretariat, any ministers, any politicians throughout this process. And that's the way I said at the start of this process I wanted it to be. So I've never taken on any role where I've been a yes person for anybody. So just in case that's hanging in the room, I can assure everybody the integrity of this process. Thank you very much. Okay, so look, as Cathal said, 15 minutes, we'll keep it fluid, but 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so, 20 minutes at your table. Take your time, work it through. There's no race. If we need more time, we have more time. We'll be available to walk around the tables, but let's kick off as a start. Thank you.